Good morning, church. We're so happy to have each of you. Welcome to Culture Live. My name is Levi, and we're going to get right into the message today. I'm excited for what God has for us. So let me pray, just prepare our hearts once again right before I get into my word. So pray with me. Jesus, we thank you so much for the moments that we share together. You are so good to us. You are so worthy to be praised. We come to you now, Father, asking that you would just be with us in this time, that you would speak to our hearts, that you would cultivate our minds. God, we want to look different today because of you. We want to be changed. We want to be molded. We want to be rearranged, realigned with you. May we all feel a sense of peace, a calm that comes over us today as you encourage our hearts, because you have good news to bring to us. We thank you for that, Jesus. It's in your name that I pray. Amen. Amen. So today I'd like to start like this. I've noticed that there's a common theme in our lives. There's a common theme in my friends and myself and the people I'm around. And this is something that we all do, I believe. But I'll just start out with me, and you can see if you think it relates with you. But I love to watch TV shows. I love to watch movies. And if you ever hear me talk about these TV shows or these movies, then you will hear me talk about the actors that play these roles like I know them personally. Because I will talk about them on a first name basis. See, but we all do this, don't we? We talk about the celebrities that we know, and we call them by their first name. So if I'm talking about Justin Bieber, I'm like, Biebs, Or, we have these pet names for them, or if I say Billy, maybe the first thing that pops up in your mind is Billie Eilish. Maybe some of you are watching right now, you're like, I have no clue who that is. Well, you're a little behind. She just won like a ton of Grammys, so look her up. She's awesome. But we all have these pet names, or we call these celebrities or these actors, these actresses, these artists by their first name or even last name, but we have these names for them, and we talk about them like we know them personally. See, I was considering this, and I was thinking the way that we name things might actually reveal something about our approach to that thing. The way that we see it, the way that we view it, the way that we approach it. And then as I thought about this in relation to Jesus, and I thought to myself, how much would our world be different if it approached Jesus, if it knew Jesus by His name, if it knew Jesus by His essence, by what makes Him up and His name? How different would our world look, and how different would your life look if you approached Jesus because you knew His name, because you knew what was His essence, what made Him up, not just the word Jesus, but everything that embodies His character. So as I wrestled with this, a verse popped up into my mind. And it was Hebrews 4. So we're actually going to be in Hebrews 4 today, but I'm going to go to verse 14 through 16. It's all the way at the end of the passage, and I'm going to read these two verses to you. It says this. It'll be on your screen if you don't have it. So then, we must cling in faith to all we know to be true, for we have a magnificent king priest, Jesus Christ, the Son of God, who rose into the heavenly realm for us and now sympathizes with us in our frailty. He understands humanity, for as a man, our magnificent king priest was tempted in every way just as we are, and conquered sin. So now we come freely, boldly to where love is enthroned, to receive mercy's kiss and discover the grace we urgently need to strengthen us in our time of weakness. In our time of weakness. See, I wrestled with this verse because I thought about the way that we approach Jesus. And maybe you can relate to this. See, I thought about the way that I approach people that I don't even know, but that I feel like I know because I become connected to their characters, or they are these earthly beings that are so high, and they're famous, but yet in some way I feel like I relate to them, I connect to them, so therefore I call them by a name that makes them approachable in my mind. And I thought about this in relation to Jesus, and I thought, how do I approach Jesus? And I thought about this, and my knee-jerk reaction to like, how do I approach Jesus is oftentimes, and maybe you can relate to this, is, here I go again. I did it again. I'm sorry again. Forgive me again. Oftentimes we get in this moment and we're talking to Jesus and we say, we're asking for forgiveness and we admit all the wrong that we've done as we approach Jesus. And I was thinking about this and I was wrestling with this because this verse tells us to come freely and boldly to where love is enthroned, to where Jesus is, to come to Him with all that we have, and this is to be our approach. As I was literally having one of these moments, and I was in my prayer time, and I approached Jesus in this way, and I thought to myself, I was coming to Jesus in this approach of, here I go again. Forgive me again. I'm wrong again. I did it again. And I feel like I have to get that off my chest so Jesus will accept me. Yet His Word tells me to come freely and boldly to where love is enthroned. And as I thought about this, I just felt the Spirit within me just say, Levi, I don't want this for you. And I'm telling you today that God doesn't want this for you. He doesn't want you to approach Him in this way of, I did it again, forgive me again, I'm sorry again. And this verse came to my mind as I was in this moment because He wants me to boldly approach Him. And then as I read this, I was like, all right, I get it. I've done it this way, but You want me to approach You in the way that I have come so freely and boldly and approach these people I don't even know and talk about them on a first-name basis as if I'm close to them. But I thought to myself, so how do I do this? What does this look like? How do I come freely and boldly to where love is enthroned? And maybe you're thinking to yourself right now, yes, Levi, I relate. I'm there right there with you. I always feel like I have to get something off my chest when I'm talking to God. Like I have to get this off my chest so He will accept me. He has to know that I'm a sinner and that I've done wrong, and I have to ask for forgiveness to come to Him. Therefore, so I can pray, God, will You do this for me? Will You do this for me? Or whatever the case may be, we feel like we have to get something off our chest. So I thought about this, and I was like, how does this work? And then I began to study this chapter, because I believe there's context here. There's more to unpack than just come freely and boldly. What does that look like? What does that mean? So as I began to study this week, I looked at the entire chapter, which is really what we're going to do today. For the most part, we're going to look at the large majority of this chapter. We're just going to start in verse 1 so we can unpack and understand what this looks like and understand what this verse is getting at. Come freely and come boldly. So if you'll look with me at verse 1, as I said, it'll be on your screen. It says this, now God has offered to us the same promise of entering into His realm and resting in confident faith. Resting in confident faith. So we must be extremely careful to ensure that we all embrace the fullness of that promise and not fail to experience it. So as I read this, I think He's offered to me the same promise. He's offered to you the same promise of entering into the realm of resting in confident faith. What is this promise? Well, the verse tells us the promise is rest. The promise is rest. But we're going to continue reading. In verse 2, for we have heard the good news of deliverance just as they did. Yet they didn't join their faith with the word. Instead, what they heard didn't affect them deeply, for they doubted. For those of us who believe, faith activates the promise, and we experience the realm of confident rest. For he has said, I was grieved with them and made a solemn oath. They will never enter into this calming rest of my spirit. They will never enter into the calming rest of my spirit. See, what's this they that these verses keep talking about? They were offered the same promise. You are now offered this promise. They didn't join the faith with their word. Who is this they that it's talking about? Well, it's referencing and it's quoting Psalms 95. We're not going to go there. You can go read later for your own interest. But Psalms 95, 10 through 11 says these exact words. I was grieved with them and made a solemn oath. They will never enter in to the calming rest of my spirit. It's talking about they. It's talking about the Israelites. And it's actually referencing a time in Numbers. And in the book of Numbers, they is the Israelites who have been set free from Egypt, set free from slavery. And they're out in the wilderness, and they've been out there for a while. And if any of you are familiar at all with the story, they continue time after time. God delivers them, He sets them free, and then again and again they grumble and complain, and they get upset. And finally God gets to this point where I've had enough. And He actually decides, I'm going to kill them. I'm going to do away with them. I can't stand them anymore. This is all they're ever doing. And maybe to you that saying seems kind of wrathy and angry. And well, just continue to listen to what actually ends up happening. Moses prays to God and says, God, don't do this. Don't kill them. Give them another chance. And God ultimately ends up deciding, all right, here's what I'll do. I'm not going to kill them, but they've kind of dug their own grave. So I'm just going to allow this to play out. But listen, they will never enter into my calming rest. They will never enter into this promise. This promise that we have still today, which at their time was the promised land. So what's in the promised land? The rest of God, the confident rest of God. And that's the they it's talking about. Let's continue on. This is about to get extremely interesting here. It says in verse 3, continuing on, God's works have all been completed from the foundation of the world. Listen here. For it says in the Scriptures, and on the seventh day God rested from all His works. This excites me so much here, because I saw something here that I had never seen. So listen up. I think this is going to give you some sort of encouragement, some sort of confidence, some sort of revelation about your God, who He is, how magnificent He is. So listen in here. It says God's works have all been completed from the foundation of the world. When I read that, I was like, whoa, wait just a second. For it says in Scripture, remember here, we're talking about rest. The promise is rest. He says, they will never enter into my rest. Then it says, God's works have all been completed from the foundation of the world. For it says in the Scriptures, and on the seventh day God rested. So God entered the promise Himself. He is the promise. He is rest from all His works. This is God that was, what's happening here is it's referencing Genesis 2:2. And if you're familiar at all, God created the world in 6 days, and on the seventh day God rested. And it's what it's saying here. It's saying on the seventh day God rested from His works. But listen, this goes beyond that. It blew my mind. See, when I think about God and His works, I definitely see the works of creation in 6 days, but I don't see God being done. I don't see God's work being completed in 7 days. When I think about it in my own mind. See, I don't think about God's rest until I think about Jesus finally coming. And maybe you're the same as me, maybe you're not. But I found this interesting. I think about Jesus coming and Jesus rescuing man from sin. And then when Jesus says in John 19:30, says, it is finished. I think of God's works in that way. See, this says God's works have all been completed from the foundation of the world. For it says in Scriptures, and on the seventh day God rested from all His works. it is finished. So I think about this and I'm like, wait, I thought it wasn't finished until Jesus said it was finished, and Jesus is God, so then it was ultimately completed. But Hebrews tell me, no, 7 days, it was done. God entered rest and it was done. So I want you to understand here, this is where it gets interesting. John 19:30 says, Jesus says, as he hangs on the cross, his final word, he says, it is finished. I look up the literal meaning of this word in its original context, in the Greek. And this word means accomplished. It means executed. It means fulfilled. You know what this tells us? It tells us something so incredible about our God. It tells me that Jesus was not a plan B. Jesus was not an alternative. Jesus was not a sub-in off the bench. It wasn't, here humans, try to get it right. Here's the law, try your best. No. It wasn't that. It wasn't that at all. It says that God completed all His works from the foundation of the world in 7 days. See, life as we know it was signed, sealed, and shipped on the 7th day, and then delivered at the cross with Jesus. See, when it means accomplished, executed, fulfilled, those words mean that the work was done. The work was set out. Let me give you an image. It's like this. You order packages all the time from Amazon. If you don't, you need to start doing it. I do it all the time. You order the package. Your work is done. There's nothing else you have to do. The package is on its way to you. It's being delivered. And then when it gets to you, it's fulfilled, it's executed. Think about it this way, another example. Movies, we all love movies. We sit down and watch movies. By the time you watch that movie, the work has already been done. It's already been completed. By the time it gets to you, it's been executed. This is important that we grasp this, because what this is saying is that our God is the beginning from the end, and everything in between. He's seen your life to all the way to the end. He's been there and back, and He's from the beginning in the end. He's seen it all. He's done it all. He has been resting from the foundation of the world. This should give you hope that He has been in rest while we've been here feeling unwound, feeling uncertain about all of our life and everything that's going on in 2020. He has been in rest from the foundation of the world. See, when sin separated man, when we had the fall of man, that didn't blindside God. Jesus was no plan B. Jesus was always the plan. God was always the plan. God restoring man, God setting things right. God was always the plan, and His works have been completed from the foundations of the world. I think that is so incredible, and it means so much for what we're going to get to here in a bit. So now let's continue on reading. But I want to read verse 5, and then we're going to jump to verse 8, and then we'll backtrack. So verse 5 says this, and again, as stated before, they will never enter into my calming place of rest. So this promise of rest, they didn't enter into it. But He says, God says in His Word, He says in verse 1, He says that this is the same promise offered to us, rest. We're going to look at this more. Let's go to verses 8 and 9. This is so incredible. I love these verses because this is where it gets really good. Now if this promise of rest was fulfilled when Joshua brought the people into the land, God wouldn't have spoken later of another rest yet to come. So we conclude that there is still a full and complete rest waiting for believers to experience. This is amazing here. Joshua and Caleb were with the Israelites in the wilderness in Numbers, where I told you that God said, all right, everyone's going to die out here. No one gets to experience this rest, this promise. No one gets to experience. He said, except, this is the part I didn't tell you, except Joshua and Caleb. So Joshua and Caleb, they do enter into the promised land, and they do get to experience this. But here's what's so cool. The mention of Joshua here in Hebrews is supposed to get us excited because to the original reader, this is to remind us that Joshua is the same name as Jesus. And this is to tell us that Joshua, when he entered into the promised land and experienced that rest, that was not the full and complete rest. That is not what rest looks like. Rest is not to its fullness yet. It says there is still a full and complete rest yet to come. And it's a rest that is promised to us still today. And it's not an idea. It's not an ideology. It's not a principle. Rest is a person. Rest is Jesus. Joshua is the same name as Jesus. It's supposed to direct our minds to say, Joshua, that wasn't the complete rest. Oh, Messiah, Jesus, that's our complete rest. It's not an idea. It's not a place. It's a person. Rest is a person. See, I've titled my message today, Rest Has a Name. Rest has a name. We're going to unpack this more, but it's important that you grasp right now. As I said, rest is more than an idea. It's more than a principle. It's more than logic. It's more than reason. See, when we think of rest, we think of it's got to be this, it's got to be this, it's got to be this. We try to work out rest in our mind of what rest looks like for us. But can I tell you today that all your ideas of rest will never fulfill because that's not the complete rest. Rest has a name, and His name is Jesus. Rest is a person. So now let's go back. Now that we know that this rest is yet to be fulfilled, yet to be completed in us, let's look at verse 6. It said, we're going to jump back to verse 6. It says, those who first heard the good news of deliverance failed to enter into that realm of faith's rest because of their unbelieving hearts. Yet the fact remains. Yet the fact remains. Yet the fact remains that we still have the opportunity to enter in to this faith rest life and experience the fulfillment of the promise. This is where it gets really, really intriguing because now we're going to unpack what rest looks like. I said it's Jesus. Remember that this all started with how do we come freely and boldly? This is all like a domino effect. How do we come freely and boldly? Well, I'll tell you how. It goes to verse 1. It says, you've been given the promise. The promise is still offered to you today. All right, the promise was not fulfilled at Joshua. It came in the form of Jesus. It's supposed to remind you that Jesus is rest. All right, now we know Jesus is rest. How do we enter it? What does it look like? How does this all take place? Yet the fact remains, it says. Our hope is that the fact still remains that this opportunity to enter into this faith rest life and experience the fulfillment of that promise is still offered to us. The opportunity is still there. Here's the good news, that it's still there. In 2020, where you feel everything's crashing down around you, rest is still available to you. And you're about to find out what rest looks like. And I think it's going to change your mind. I think God's going to convince you. He's going to persuade you than what you've been taught or what you've thought that rest looks like. I want everybody to listen in right now because I think He's got a word for you right here. And it's in this phrase, faith, rest, life. It should have been on your screen, but in my Bible, it puts faith-rest. It's one complete phrase. And I really wrestled with this. I thought about this. I was like, what is the faith rest life? Why does it put those terms together? Because in my Bible, this passage is actually called the faith rest life. The faith rest life. And I was thinking about this, and I was like, faith and rest are synonymous. They're one and the same. They cannot be separated. And I'm going to unpack what that looks like and how to understand that. See, faith, remember, as we know it, as we always talk about it, faith is initiated by God. It is divine persuasion. It is God who convinces you. He deposits faith into you in your time of weakness. It's not you conjuring it up to impress Him. It's everything He puts into you. We've talked about this. We talk about this a lot. See, because we have the concept, we have the idea that faith is something that we have to believe. And once we believe, we can conjure up enough faith that we can believe on our own. And that we can believe in a God without God ever revealing Himself to us. But that's not what faith is. It's God convincing you. It means literally divine persuasion. We talk about that a lot. But here's a part of faith that we don't talk about a lot. And that's what I want to talk about today. Something that we don't often talk about when it comes to faith is that faith is predicated on the idea that we don't understand it all. It's predicated on the unknown, on the uncertainty, in the fear. It's predicated, I'm not going to say that it's predicated on fear. I'm saying it's predicated in sometimes you feel fearful because of the situation, the unknown circumstance that you're in. I don't want to say, don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that it's predicated on fear because it's not at all. But this feeling of feeling unwound, I think we've all felt it. At this point, it's July. Let's just be honest with ourselves. I think we've all felt it. This feeling of feeling unwound, uncertain, the unknown. You're feeling anxious. You're feeling afraid. 2020 has gotten the best of you. But what is God saying here in terms of the faith rest life when He says that when it's basically the faith that we never talk about is, yes, it's God convincing you, but it's also predicated on the fact that we can't understand it all, we don't know it all, we don't have it all figured out, which is also contrary to what we often believe. What is God saying in light of all this to the Israelites wandering in the wilderness, missing out on the promise? This is what God is saying. He's saying to us the same thing He was trying to say to them in Numbers. I understand that you don't have it all figured out. I sympathize with you. That's what we started in verse 14 through 16. It says, Jesus, our high priest, He's been in our shoes. He's lived a life in our human frailty, and He can sympathize with our pain, with our uncertainty, with our weakness. He can understand where we've been, where we've walked, and how this life can be so unknown. But He's saying, I can understand that you don't have it all figured out. That's okay. I can sympathize with you on that. But I will convince you in the form of rest. And rest has a name. And His name is Jesus. But here's what we got to understand right now, because maybe right now this is all a bit foreign to you, and you're like, it's still not clicking. Listen, here's how it can click for you if you'll understand that what your brain typically tells you is your brain in this world tells you that you are very insecure if you don't have it all figured out. If you don't understand it all. If you don't know what you're going to do with your life. If you don't cross every T and dot every I. If you don't know where you're going to work, who you're going to marry, where you're going to get married, how many kids you're going to have, what you're going to name every single one of them, the town you're going to live in. If you don't have these things figured out, you're insecure. You need to get it together. You need to have faith. This is what the world tells you, and this is what religion tells you, but that's not what faith looks like. Faith is saying, I don't have it all figured out. I don't know where this road leads. I have no clue. But it's telling you that it's faith and rest because you don't have it all figured out. You can rest in Jesus because He's the captain driving this ship. He's the one that holds the universe in His hands. He's the one who's been resting since the seventh day. Here we are thousands of years later. He's still in the same posture. He's still resting. You feel uncertain. You feel like you're in the unknown. You feel like you don't have it all figured out. You feel like the world is crumbling on you because they think you're insecure. They think, what are you doing? And you're like, I don't know, but I'm with God. Can I tell you that contrary to what your brain tells you, contrary to what the world tells you, this faith of not having it all figured out, not understanding it all, is actually the most secure place that you can be. It's actually the most secure place you can be because you're like, I don't know what's going to happen next, but I'm with the Lord. It's the best place you can be. It's the most secure place that you can be. And many of you are thinking right now, how? Like, I don't feel secure at all. But rest has a name, and it's offered to us. This opportunity, this promise, this rest is offered to us. Maybe you haven't found it yet, but we're going to get to that in a little bit. But it's offered to us. It's this life of, I'll be honest with you right now, I'm looking for a separate job. You know, I'm doing this, but I'm also looking for a separate job. I've been putting in resumes. But I had this revelation this week, and this is what this life looks like. This is what faith looks like. This is what the faith rest life looks like. Because I don't have it all figured out, but the world looks at me and is like, you got a degree, what are you going to do with your life? You're getting married, what are you going to do with your life? How are you going to support your family? How are you going to provide for your family? But faith tells me this. This is what this life looks like. This is just an example. Hey, Levi, how'd that interview go? Man, terrible. They said there was no way I'm getting this job. It was awful. It was awful. And then someone looks at me and says, man, have you lost your mind? Like, what are you doing? No. I haven't lost my mind. Like, I'm just going to keep rolling with God. I'm just going to keep going with God. I'm going to keep putting in resumes because I'm not worried. I ain't got nothing to worry about. I'm in the unknown. I'm in the insecure place of what the world tells me, but I'm in the most secure place because I know God is the captain of my ship. I know He's been resting since the seventh day. I know that if I seek first His kingdom, then all else will be added to me. It's His will, it's not my will, and I'm just going to keep rolling. I'm going to keep doing everything I can, but He has given me a rest because He has convinced me that, Levi, no matter what comes, no matter where you go, I'm with you, I'm for you, and I'm the one driving this thing. It's not you. It's not what you can do for your family. It's not how you can provide in the ways that you think that you can provide. You keep trying. You keep doing your thing. Ultimately, the Bible says that man can pick his way. He can pick his direction, but God is ultimately going to realign His steps with His plan. This is what the faith rest life looks like. And let me tell you this. Some of you are thinking, man, that's not the pastors I've run into, so you're a lot different than the guys that I've been around. Can I tell you this? If you ever meet a pastor that has it all figured out, you need to run as fast and as far as you can in the opposite direction. And you heard that straight from me, I promise you. Because listen, I think the closer that we get to His Word, which, I mean, I think all of us would admit that pastors should be relatively close to His Word and constantly in it. The closer that we get, the more that we read these words, that we should realize that I don't have it all figured out. If you sit down and you're talking to a pastor, there should be constant conversation of, you got me, I don't know. You got me with that question, I don't know the answer. And I'll tell you that all the time, I don't know. That's the most secure place to be, because if we know and if we have it all figured out, then we don't need God. We don't need faith. There's nothing secure about having it all figured out. That's not where God is. God is right here in the unknown because it's not unknown to Him. It's not unknown to Him. And many of you are thinking right now, and I'm just going to bust your bubble right now, many of you are thinking that this life is about a destination. That Jeremiah 29:11 tells me that God has a plan for my life and I got to get to that destination. And I don't know which way to go, honestly, but I know that He's got a plan for me and this life is a destination. Can I tell you, we often forget that it's not about a destination. Jesus is the destination. Jesus is the destination. I know many of you are upset because you're like, God won't tell me exactly what His plan is. God, please tell me 2020 is so hard. I just lost my job. I can't get a job. Things are falling apart. Coronavirus is all around. I'm having to wear a stupid mask. Maybe you're feeling that way. And you don't know what the plan is. And you're like, God, what's the plan? And can I tell you why God's not telling you what the plan is? Because He's the plan. He's the point. He's the destination. It's about being with Him. It's about walking with Him. It's about a life with Him. This faith rest life, you've made it to your destination. When you catch this, that I ain't got it figured out. I don't know which way I'm going to go. I don't know if I'll ever get a job. But I know the one who's driving this thing. And I'm with Him. He's my destination. It says in Matthew, seek first the kingdom of heaven and all else will be given unto you. Jesus is the point. Jesus is the plan. Well, Levi, we got to make money. We got to do this. I understand those things. But guess what? God understands them even better than you do, even better than I do. And He's your provider. I know you're feeling, I know you might be feeling this way because I'm feeling this way. You don't know which way to turn. You don't know what tomorrow brings. You don't know what the future holds. But guess what? I know who my companion is. I know who's driving this thing. And I'm convinced that He is with me. He's my destination. And wherever I go, I can experience rest in Him in the unknown. Because He's been resting from the foundations of the world. He didn't start to sweat when Jesus hit the earth and it's like, oh, is this thing going to mess up? No, Jesus is God. He was always the plan. He's been resting from the foundations of the world. You need to understand that your God is way bigger than your circumstance. You can experience the rest. He's offering it to you today. Enter into this rest. This is what the faith rest looks like. Divine persuasion, Him convincing you, looks like this. It tells you that I'm persuaded in my companion. I don't know all the directions. I'm just persuaded that He's the captain of my ship. His name is Jesus. He is God. And where I am, He is. And there's rest. And there's my confidence. There's how I come boldly and freely to the throne of grace and receive mercy's kiss. Because He's my confidence. He's my rest. Regardless of what I go through, He's the point. He's the destination. Not my job, not my family, not my money, not my renown. It's Jesus. Many of you right now, I need to speak to some people today, right now. You're struggling. You're thinking, will I ever get this job? Will I ever get a job? Will I ever have the money where I feel safe and secure, like I'm not out there busting myself every day? Will I ever get this relationship that I'm longing for? Will I ever find that one? Jesus is the one. He's your one. And He knows the desires of your heart because He knows you want still a romantic relationship. And He wants that for you more than you do. And you're thinking, there's no way He wants that for me more than I do. I promise you He does. He's for you. He's going to give you the desires of your heart, but it says, seek first His kingdom. Now let's look at verse 7 because this is where it really hits home. For God still has ordained a day for us to enter into this rest. And it says right here, it's called today. It's called today. For it was long afterwards that God repeated in David's words, if only today you would listen to His voice and do not harden your hearts. If only today you would enter in to this rest that He has for you. See, I looked up this word rest because I'd been doing this a lot with the entire thing here. This word rest is an active verb. It's an active verb, and what it means is that it is actively happening. Some of you need to understand right now, like, Levi, I'm trying so hard. I want to enter into this rest. And then I feel it, and then it fades, and dang it. It's an active verb. God is constantly wanting to bring you. What it means is He's constantly wanting to bring you to where He is, to where He dwells. He's wanting to remind you today. I'm on appointment today to remind you that you can enter into this rest today. You've had a bad week. You did some stuff this weekend that you're not proud of. It's 4th of July and you were just trying to have fun. But you can enter into this rest today. And you come freely and boldly today to where God dwells, and He can reassure you. He can convince you that He is with you despite your circumstances. He's not going to bring you to you and you're not going to come to Him, and say, all right, God, convince me. No, He's going to come to you and He's going to convince you, but He's not going to convince you that everything is going to be all right and that your circumstances are going to get fixed and you're going to get this job. And no. He's going to convince you that even if those things don't work out, He's with you, He's for you, He's the destination, He's the plan. So what does it look like? So now you're thinking to yourself, I want to do this today. I want to experience this rest, and I don't want it to just be today. I want to continue to experience it. Well, look at verse 10 with me. As we enter into God's faith rest life, this is what it looks like. We cease from our own works, just as God celebrates His finished works and rests in them. Just as God celebrates His finished work. Listen, when I felt this revelation, and God's like, I don't want this for you, Levi. I want you to come freely and boldly. I think of the parable in Luke 15, the prodigal son. He's on his way home and he's thinking of everything he can say to try to fix the situation. Anything that he can do so that his father will accept him back, because he's gone and he's thrown all his money away and he's wasted his life away. He's thinking of everything he should say. Don't we do this? We don't think of Jesus as rest. We don't think of Him as, despite your circumstances, I'm still for you. No, we think, He's perfect, I'm not. I gotta clean up a little bit. God, I'm sorry, forgive me, I did it again, I'm so sorry. Will you just let me say something to you if I can get it out? Just please accept my apology. But it says, how do you come freely and boldly to the throne of grace? You cease from your own works. You let everything you've done die. Good or bad. You say, I'm going to the throne of grace where God's been resting, because on the 7th day, He completed it all. He did it all for me. And He's celebrating His works. He's not waiting to hear what I have to say. He's celebrating His works. And His works are enough. Jesus is enough. Rest is enough. See, that prodigal son, he gets to his father and he starts to apologize. He interrupts him and he says, hey, welcome home. He gives him everything. He's like, let's go have a party. It's what God wants for you. He wants you to enter into this rest today. And He wants you to cease from your own works. Every time, I want you to think about this. Every time that you try to get in your prayer time or you try to approach God, I want you to think of His essence. I want you to think of Him as rest. And I want you to come to Him freely and boldly, but you have to cease from your own works. And you got to walk into this celebration of everything that He's done for you, despite everything you couldn't do for yourself. See, I want to say this to you. God will never try to motivate you from your lack. Let me say it again. God will never try to motivate you from your lack or your inadequacies. He will only and always inspire you from His abundance. God will never try to motivate you from your lack. You're not going to come to God. Be like, God, sorry, I did it again. Yeah, well, if you'd stop doing that, Levi, well then you'd probably get this, and you'd probably experience the life you want. That's how many of us see God. That's not God. He will never try to motivate you on your works. It says cease to your works and celebrate His. He will only and always try to inspire you from His abundance. Hey, listen, this is not you because I am you. I've set you free. I've given you an abundance of life. Hey, you can do better because of everything I did. That's what God will do. He'll inspire you from everything from who He is. Nothing from your lack or your inadequacies. Let's look at verse 11, and I promise I'm almost done. Let's look at verse 11. I know all of you are dying to hear me say that. Verse 11 says this, so then we must give our all. Many of us we're missing this here, but I'm gonna explain it. We must give our all and be eager to experience this faith rest life so that no one falls short by following the same pattern of doubt and unbelief. See, many of you heard that and you just forgot the last verse. Because it says you must be eager to give your all. And you thought, wait, I'm supposed to cease to my own works. Now I've got to be eager to give my all? Which one is it? What this is saying here is we must be eager to step into this unknown life. To this life we're living in, this uncertain life. This life that we have no answer to. We can't understand it all. And that's the most secure place we can be. Other people may think they've got it figured out because they're fine, they're secure. Guess what? I can tell you right now, if you're feeling uncertain, if you're feeling like everything around you is crumbling and you're in the unknown, you're the most secure person on this earth because you're right where you can be to enter into this rest today. And you can rest despite your circumstances. You must be eager to step into the unknown because of the one who is leading you through the unknown. This is a perfect picture of the wilderness. This verse says, so that no one falls short by following the same pattern of doubt and unbelief. You hear that and you're like, Levi, I don't know how you keep saying that faith is not about what I do and how I believe. If you read it like that, you're kind of like, yeah, it probably does. It's not though, because listen, I looked up the original translation, the original language. Let me tell you what this doubt and unbelief means. It blew my mind. It got me so excited. It means this. It literally translates to this. I'm not making this up. Go look it up for yourself. The condition of being unpersuadable. The condition of being unpersuadable. It's literally the opposite of faith. Faith is God divinely persuades you. He convinces you that despite your circumstances, He's in control, He's sovereign, and you're going to be all right because you're with Him. Doubt and unbelief is the condition of being unpersuadable. It's not that you couldn't conjure it up yourself, you couldn't believe for yourself. Listen, the Bible says, seek and you shall find. So if right now you're thinking, I want to believe, I'm trying to believe, I can't. If you're in the best place, you're good, don't worry. God's going to reveal Himself to you. He's going to convince you. This is not what this is saying. This is saying someone with the condition of being unpersuadable. Let's look at the wilderness. They've been wandering, but God continues to deliver them, to set them free, to bring them food, to bring them water. They're in the unknown. They're in 2020. They don't know what's going to happen next. They're uncertain. They're feeling anxious. They're feeling afraid. They don't know what's going to come next. And God's saying, you're in the most secure place you can be. If you would just allow yourself to be convinced of that. If you would just allow yourself to be convinced that because I'm with you, nothing can stand against you. If you would just allow yourself to be persuadable in this season of unrest, allow yourself to find rest. Allow yourself to be vulnerable, to be available. Today, it says that This day of rest is today. God has ordained it today. Rest is an active verb. That means it's today, it's tomorrow, it's the next day, it's the next day. You can enter into this rest. You can say, I want to be persuadable, God. I want to trust you. You're feeling uncertain, you're feeling unwound. Maybe you're a parent and you don't know about if your kid's going to go back to school this fall, and you don't know if they do, if they're going to be safe. Maybe you're a person who's lost their job and you don't know if you're going to get your job back or what life's going to look like from here. Maybe you're thinking the economy's in shambles. I don't know what's going to happen next. Am I going to lose my house? Am I going to lose my cars? Jesus says this in Matthew 11:28. Come to me, and I will give you rest. Come to me, and I will give you rest. Jesus was shouting it from the rooftops. Rest is not what you look like. Rest is not security. Rest is not safety. Rest is not you feeling comfortable in your home, with your job, with your money, with your kids, with your health. That's not what rest looks like. God's trying to open your eyes today that there's nothing different about 2020 than ever. It was always just as uncertain. It was always just as unknown. He's sovereign. He's in control. He's trying to say, you can come to me. You can find rest. I'll give you a real rest. This temporary earth life that you experience will never satisfy, will never bring you satisfaction, will never bring you rest. He says, come to me. I'll give you rest. Seek first my kingdom. Make yourself available. Make yourself persuadable. Watch how I do it. Cease from your works and let's celebrate everything I've done. That's what He's inviting you into today, church. If everyone would, all over, wherever you're at, just bow your heads with me right now. Jesus, we surrender our lives to you right now, no matter who we are, where we are, or what we've done. Despite our circumstances, despite the bad we've done, despite the good we've done or that we think we've done, we make ourselves available. We make ourselves persuadable right now. Because we want to enter into this rest today, this promise today. We want to receive it again today. We know now that actually, despite what the world's been telling us, that 2020 could actually be the best year yet if we change our perspective. Because we can shift, we can align our lives to you. We can come to you and find rest daily. Because you're what rest looks like. Despite what the world tells us, we're in a very secure place if we don't have it all figured out. The best place to be. Because it's the place where we need you the most. We as a church today, we as a people today, change the way we think. And we say now, as difficult as it may be, we say thank you for 2020. We say thank you for the uncertainty. We say thank you for the unknown, because if it wasn't for all those things, we couldn't have recognized that we can enter this rest today, that we can come freely and boldly to the throne of grace and receive mercy's kiss and be strengthened in our time of weakness. Father, you're too good to us. We want to celebrate now everything that you've done, everything that you're doing in our lives, in our midst, in our communities. Our hope is not found in the things of this world. Our hope is found in rest, and rest has a name. We love you, Jesus. It's in your name I pray. Amen. Amen. Hey, church, thanks so much for tuning in. We'll be back with you next Sunday. We hope you'll tune in. We love you. Have an excellent Sunday. See you later.